1. This all went down in August 2016, in the time frame of a couple weeks. Around that time, one of the apps in my app cycle was Whisper, an anonymous confession app. The app was originally meant for venting via text over macro-image-based posts, or telling secrets and having discussions anonymously. However, the app is also used for things such as hookups, dating, illegal activity, spam, and social networking, if you can call it that. The demographic from my take has to be 90% younger females, 13 to 25. Enough about the app. Point is, I met someone through the app. During this time, I was dealing with a lot of unsuccessful attempts at love. One day I posted something pertaining to love and relationships, like a joke or something. To my surprise, a girl responded. We had a little direct message banter go on for a few days. In our texts, I discovered she lived somewhat nearby, and she was about the same age. I jokingly asked her out on a date, again to my surprise. She said yes. So we tried working out a day to meet. In our texts, she mentioned the area where she lived, so one day I drove to her area and asked her out once I got there. She lived about an hour away, so it was kind of a gamble, but I thought it'd be a nice surprise if things lined up. Turned out she couldn't meet. I didn't tell her I was in her neighborhood, but we texted throughout that day. After I discovered she was busy, she asked me what I was up to. I told her I was going to get some food as I hadn't ate all day. While texting her, I had parked in a random shopping area's parking lot that had a fast food restaurant, which was where I ate. We decided to meet a few days later. Somewhat unorganized, I told her I'd drive to her area, and I texted her when I was nearby. So naturally, not knowing her area very well, just out of familiarity, I parked in the same parking lot. When I tell her where I am, she replies, "I'm walking, I'll be there in 5. To my surprise, I discover her apartment is literally right across the street from this parking lot. The same parking lot I parked in front of the day prior, where I sat and ate, talking to her via text. While getting to know her, I find out she recently moved from Israel. Now the longest lead-up ever for the key coincidence of the story. At the fast food restaurant the day before, the cashier who served me, his name tag said Israel. Nothing ever really came of her and I. Shortly after that time, I went through a major move, job loss and job change. But the few things following that day, I felt like the stars were aligning. She was a good-looking girl. I thought we hit it off. I thought, wow, maybe this is the universe trying to tell me something. But then, within the following weeks, I went through one of the biggest 180s of my life, and we lost contact. Along with everything went that feeling of magic. That there was something pulling the strings, and yet another failed attempt at romance. Who knows, perhaps it meant something. Nonetheless, it happened, and it's kind of a cool story. 2. So when I was a kid, I was quite stupid. When I was 9, I was going with my aunt to my friend's birthday, and we had to make a stop to wrap the gift for her. We had to park on the other side of the road from the place where they wrapped them. After we finished, I decided to run for it. I said I was stupid. And of course I was hit by a car. Miraculously, I didn't break anything, but I did have a concussion, so I had to stay in the hospital for some time. Due to concussion, I had some holes in my memory, but I do remember one day vividly. That day my mom took me from the hospital and brought me to an old Soviet-time building. I live in a post-Soviet country. I remember an old playground in front of it, and remember a weird construction on the playground that looked kind of dangerous. It kind of looked like a small Ferris wheel without cabins. So we went inside to the small apartment where some gypsies lived. I clearly remember 3 children with big eyes staring at me curiously. We entered a room that I think was a bedroom, and there was a beautiful young gypsy woman. I think that she wore stereotypical clothes like a long skirt and had very long, dark, curly hair. She said some ritual that I don't really remember and asked me some questions. She told me that everyone has different guardian angels who are protecting them since birth. I had 2 pigeons as my guardian angels who caught me, and that's how I survived. The only other thing I remember is that she asked me who do I want to be when I grow up, and I said a scientist, to which she replied that I will be. So I never really questioned that memory because it just seems like a thing my mom would do. Until a couple of years ago, my mom was telling this story, and it was completely different. In her version, one day when she was visiting me at the hospital, as she was about to leave, I grabbed her and said all of this about pigeons and guardian angels. I was kind of freaked out because I thought that maybe it was a dream, and because of the concussion I confused it with reality. But this is nothing like what my usual dreams are, as I never remember faces or follow the same storyline in my dreams. By the way, I am in college right now, and I'm studying something very far from science, even though I still have a great interest in it, but I don't think my GPA will ever allow me to pursue it academically. 3. So for the last 15 plus years, I have been freaked out by this memory I have from childhood. I'm 30 now, and it still feels totally real. But the rational side of my mind has forced me to reconcile it as a strange, vivid dream. The memory is from when I was a young child, possibly 5 or 6 years old. My parents divorced right about that age, and in this memory, they're still together. Here is the context. It was Easter, or very close to it. My family owns 40 acres of land in the Catskills. I spent countless weeks up there through my life, and in this memory, most of my close family was up for the holiday. It was tradition to hide the children's Easter baskets, and have the kids find them instead of eggs. So the dream begins with it being Easter morning. The log cabin currently on the property wasn't built at the time, but we had a 2-car garage with a wood stove and a small camper. It was chilly that morning, and still early spring in upstate New York. My brother and I split up to search for our Easter baskets in the woods. I remember walking around the woods surrounding the garage and wondering where my basket would be. Just how far into the woods would my parents have placed it? My grandfather always smoked a pipe, and as I ventured deeper down the trail, I smelled a pretty familiar scent. I remember thinking, how did Pop Pop get down here already? I was getting closer as the scent was getting stronger. Just then, I saw something I'll never be able to get out of my mind. A humanoid rabbit resting against a tree, about 20 yards in front of me. It turned its head and looked right at me. All I felt was pure terror. I stared for a few seconds and turned around and ran for my life. I ran back to the garage and the safety of my parents. I remember crying hysterically and told my father what I had seen. I remember my family surrounding me and calming me down, telling me I had imagined it and everything was okay. The memory fades from there. I don't remember the aftermath. Still, 25 plus years later, I still have that image seared into my mind and cannot shake it. As I stated, the logical part of my mind has tried to convince myself that it was nothing more than a vivid dream or nightmare. But it's always there, lurking, and no matter how much time passes, I cannot seem to 100% convince myself that it was nothing more than the imagination of a 5-year-old. 4. So for starters, I'm in my late 20s, I don't do drugs, I hardly drink, and I typically get a full 8 hours of sleep a night. This weirdness happened in the middle of the day, a few minutes ago as a matter of fact. I'm a writer for fun. I've been writing most of my life, and semi-recently, prior to this event, I created a character. His name is Matthew Stanton. I describe the man as being in his mid to late 60s. He drinks often, his glory days are behind him. He's lonely, miserable, and a bit lax on the personal care side of things. Doesn't exercise, has a large gut because of the beer. You get the idea. One of the titular things about this character is his sexual appetite. which has only gotten stranger and more aggressive over time. He has a particular weakness when it comes to redheads, and he prefers them as young as legally possible. He's disgruntled, envious, covetous, jealous, and overall regretful that he got as old as he did. He was a reporter in his early years, and only wrote one story of any importance, the same story that ruined his career. Enter my Uber driver. The man is old, overweight, but still has sausage fingers, and lingering mass from when he took care of himself. He speaks of my city like Matthew would, with concern, and an experienced insight only years of experience could possibly bring someone. There's a hint of concern buried under years of despair, and if he was younger, he might have gone out to protest or do something about it. We're at a stoplight, and a beautiful young red-haired woman crosses the road. "Would you look at that?" Stanton says, interrupting our conversation. His head follows her without missing a beat, despite the girl noticing we noticed. The light turns green, and he's still watching her walk down the street. He sighs and then says, "If only I was 30 years younger." I chuckle and say nothing. We go on in silence, listening to the GPS give him directions, several of which he ignored because he knew a faster way. Eventually he lets out a laugh and tells me, "Boy, why can't women be more like this GPS? You know, imagine a gag navigator that would nag you like a real woman would. I bet some fellows would be right at home." I awkwardly chuckle again at the misogyny. That's when I notice the dirt and grime on his skin and the old people's sunglasses. We start talking about our town, and he starts to give me political insight from back in his day, and some experienced reasons as to why the section of town we're driving through is run down. You can sense both the frustration in his voice and the defeat. I don't put everything together until I get outside and notice his name on my app. It reads Stanton. Now I realize this event isn't as noteworthy as some of the "I teleported to Asgard overnight and saw my dead grandmother telling me about Guardians of the Galaxy 3. But it's important to me because I created Matthew Stanton, and I've spent a lot of time on him. From the dirt under his nails to the way he speaks, his mannerisms, his interactions, his past, his regrets, his build, every little detail. I know Matthew Stanton. To see him in person was a completely surreal experience. To me. And his name was Stanton to boot, which is utterly eerie. My theory is that I did capture an accurate caricature of a typical man in this area. Somewhere I created this character from the ample experiences I've had with similar men. And it was only a matter of time before I found one so similar. But to have his name, too. I feel really lucky, like everything just aligned perfectly in a once-in-a-lifetime coincidence. But I have other characters, too. 5. So I have this old chandelier in my room. It's old and kind of kitsch, with the light bulbs placed over fake candles. I only keep it because one of the candles projects a dick-shaped shadow over my bed, and me and my friends love to joke about it. Yes, very mature pals in their 20s, but whatever. Anyway, some years ago, I entered into my room and tried to switch on the light. Nothing happened, so I thought that finally the stupid chandelier had died for good. And then tried to turn on the abat-jour on my nightstand. Only it wouldn't turn on too. Normally, one would think it was a power outage. But the lights were working in the rest of the house. My father was in the kitchen with the light on and the television working just fine. My mother was in the bathroom and the light was on. And besides, my own phone, which was plugged into the power outlet near my bed, was charging just fine. I started to feel a bit anxious at that point, and tried to switch the main light on again. The switch felt hard, and I had to press it very hard to make it click. The light did not work. But one light bulb proceeded to make a faint red pinkish light, like it was trying its best to turn on. Feeling scared, I got out of my room and called my parents, who saw the red light and were unable to turn on any light too. We all agreed that it was the chandelier malfunctioning, and decided it was the best to call an electrician to check it. The electrician came and found nothing, mostly because both the chandelier and my abat-jour were acting like nothing happened, and he told us it was probably a defective light bulb making contact. So we replaced all the light bulbs on it, only for the problem to return a few months later. All lights in my room would stop working out of the blue, and then work again after a few hours. It's important to note, every time this happened, my parents were present, even if they blamed the fact onto the old chandelier. Then this strange phenomena, as suddenly as it started, ended after a couple of years. Up until a few days ago, when for a brief moment it happened again. I just told my parents about it, told them it was just like it happened last time, and they said they couldn't remember this happening before. And when they went to my room to check, everything was back to normal, and they asked me to stop pranking them. No matter how much I swore that it was real, and that they had seen it too just a few years before, they wouldn't believe me. Frustrated about this, I ranted to a friend of mine who casually had spent the night at my place just a month ago, about my parents not believing and accusing me of doing drugs, which for the record I do not use. She asked me what was the thing so strange they couldn't believe, and before I could tell her, she said she had experienced a very strange thing that would make parents question whether their child abuses substances. She then proceeded to describe the light glitch. I hadn't told her about it before, and it was before I could even explain myself, so it couldn't have been a prank from her. She woke up wanting to go to the toilet, but the abat-jour wouldn't turn on, and neither would the main light, except for a reddish light bulb. She also said she told me I was in the kitchen with the light on finishing a paper, facing directly my room, about it that very night, and I told her not to worry about it. Except I don't remember talking to her that night, nor seeing her or the red light. Since she slept with the door open, I would have noticed the red light, even if faint from where I was. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, number 37. Big thanks to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. You know, I was thinking about number 4 there with the Matthew Stanton character. I really hope that never happens to me, because I've created some interesting characters in my time, and I'm quite sure they'd all want to kick my ass for creating them in the first place. Then, of course, there are all the characters I've created over the years. I've started on projects, done a few pages, and then just abandoned them because I've lost interest. So I expect to get a knock at the door one day, and find them all gathered there, and you're like, "Why did you make us live, only to abandon us to nothingness?" At which point, I suppose I'll have to make a cup of tea for them all and explain, I got bored. It wasn't my fault, you weren't interesting enough. Which I suppose was my fault, I could have made them more interesting. Oh dear, well, I hope that never happens. Okay, where we're sitting right now, we've got Paranormal, that'll be tomorrow for you guys, that'll be Friday. I'm not really sure about TIFU and Saturday, but I'll try and have something funny up. I mean, this is Wednesday I'm recording this on right now, so I've got a few more days to put it together. I usually make the videos on Friday, so fingers and toes crossed, but if I can't get a TIFU together, we'll certainly have something interesting up. There was something else I meant to say, what was it? Oh yes, I did mention a few videos back, I can't remember what video it was, but I did mention I was going to look into doing old-timey radio plays as something new to add to the channel, but the legality of it is very, very muddy, and most of the things I've been interested in doing are under copyright. So what I could do as a possibility is I could take characters I know I could use. For example, I could use Sherlock Holmes, and while I technically couldn't use a script someone else has written for it, be it the 30s, 40s, whenever they were written, I could probably write up something myself. I understand the characters well enough that that shouldn't be an issue. So that might be a possibility. What I'll just need to do is, obviously I'll be Sherlock Holmes. I mean, obviously. Come on now. But I would need to find people who would be willing to lend their voices, because I can't play every character. Maybe if I just do Holmes and Watson and I get other people to do the miscellaneous characters. That might work. Anyway, I think I better head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.